Well, hello. How's it going? Ugh. So, it's Monday. Did you miss me? If you're wondering, hey, aren't you turning in your book to the editor tomorrow? How much did you get done on Sunday, since you didn't have to stream or anything? Shut up. That's what I say to that. Because I didn't do shit yesterday for the book. That's not true. I did half of a page. God damn it. Orbem. Well, to all my new subscribers on YouTube, hello! If you're watching this, then you want to see some super sweet ass WordPress based RPG video game development. Building a video game on WordPress. That's fucking weird, man. Yeah. Unfortunately, if you are watching this to see some video game development, you're gonna have to wait. Cause another part of my life and another part of the stream, whatever, the universe is Orbem. Orbem. What's Orbem? Yeah. This is Orbem. A book. More specifically, this is Orbem. Orbem is sci-fi crossover or sci-fi fantasy crossover novel. It's what I base all of my shit about, including the video game, the universe of Orbem. Looks like I got some new ratings. I got 3 new ratings, 1 more on Goodreads. Looks like they weren't great ratings. Let's see. Did somebody leave a shitty review? See if I can bum myself out tonight. Most recent. Alright. 3-star. Not bad. This one I know about. Don't worry about that. Started slow. Kicked up slightly. Not sure how I feel about characters yet, but a solid start for the series. Eagerly awaiting the next book. Oh, that's very nice. I'm glad you're eagerly awaiting the next book. At the end of the day, I appreciate the words. 3 stars is... It's not helping my rating. I mean, I went down to 4.1. I was at 4.2. But, obviously, there must have been more. It looks like nobody gave me a 1-star. That's good. Definitely, maybe a 4-star. I don't know. I got 3 new ratings. I don't know where they came from, but I'm glad I got a review, though. It just says Kindle customer. That's fine. You don't have a name. But yeah, positive review. If they're interested. This is very common for a first book. People don't know anything about the author. The first book is everything's brand new, right? The characters, the world, the setting, the humor, the suspense, the author's style of writing in general. And, it's just like when you hear a brand new song from a band for the first time. you don't know anything about them. It's like, oh, I kind of like this song, but there's only so much you can grasp onto because you don't know anything about them. You have no past. You have no, you have nothing invested in this person, this band. So yeah, it's good. But what really boosts your love for a person? Hey, sound of the
just followed.
The sound of the sounds. I like it. Oh, hey. I hit my follower goal. Woohoo! 20. My made up followers goal that Twitch creates. I like it. What's the next goal? Is it 30? I don't know. Maybe it's 50. That's pretty cool. I'll have to restart a new goal, I guess. You got a voice that's perfect for voice acting. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I really considered narrating my own book. But unfortunately I have about 6 accents, not including a bunch of random fantasy creatures. And I just I couldn't do it. I could do some accents, I can't do all of them. And my girl voices are lackluster, so I had to hire a professional. But yeah, I appreciate the compliment. Speaking of my voice, you're going to be hearing it a lot if you stick around. I'm actually going to be... Can you do impressions? Depends who. Not great. I'm not great at completely changing my pitch. I mean, I do a lot of singing and stuff, but as far as who I can do impressions of, it's very minute. I can do other low-tone people, make fun of them. That's probably about it, though. So yeah, this is the book. This is what it's all about. Orbem, book 2. I'm turning it in tomorrow to the line editor. So that would be Myropelia right here. This one's on pre-order, and yeah, that's what we're gonna be reading for a few chapters, so that I can get it ready for tomorrow. So yeah, and all the music in the background you hear is from my bands, either just me recording for gigs, or one of my old bands, or some more recent music that I've done inspired by Orbem, or inspired by, whatever I want to do. So if you like any of the songs and you really want to know where it is so you can listen to it again, let me know. I'll tell you where you can find it. A lot of it's available online, YouTube or Spotify or Reverb Nation or some random areas. Some of it's too old. It's just stuff that I kept around. This is a cover of Bring Me the Horizon that I did for a client on Fiverr. Never finished the complete ending though. They are waiting, I guess, for funding, so I just recorded the first layer of screams. Alright. Well, let's get into it. Let's see, do I even have the site up and running? No. We can get this started for now, just so it's ready to go when I finish doing my reading. Oh yeah, it always errors out the first time you load it. Yes, I know you think you can't load, but then I load you again and you always work. Yeah, and everybody knew I'm a WordPress programmer. I've been doing it for about 15 years. I've been a web developer for 20. Worked for Disney, Warner Brothers, Universal, built websites for all of them, built websites for, you know, Harry Potter for Warner Brothers, built DisneySyncLink.com for Disney, and I've worked on a handful of others. And yeah, been doing it a long time. That's why this is a WordPress-based RPG video game. This is Orbem Explorer, based off of the main character here. And, oh good. And I just set up NPC walking paths the last time I streamed. So this guy's moving on his own right now. But this is it. This is the book right here. Boop boop. Alright. Okay. Let's see if we can do 3 chapters. It shouldn't be that bad. And then I'm just gonna have to hustle a lot tomorrow to get the rest of them done. I mean, I've already done the complete walkthrough of all the feedback from the developmental editing stage. There's some good comments, and I revised a lot of the book already. Now I'm just literally doing a run through of the entire book. There's some tightening. There's some characters that I moved, so I have to get rid of them in some parts, and that's why I'm just kind of doing a walkthrough. So we are in chapter 15, and to set up the chapter, basically right now, yes, we have Iona, who is a POV narrator. There's 2 POV narrators in this book. That's the main character, Graham, who is the main character in the video game, and then Iona here, who is another narrator. So we get to see their point of views. It's all first-person narrative, so you get to be inside their mind. Graham and Iona are separate right now. Graham got transported to the northern region in Orbem, where he's stuck because he doesn't have his arm. His arm has his transportation device in it. They have his arm. His arm is mechanical. It got cut off in the last book. Now they're trying to get him back. So they're trying to get in contact with Myropelia, which is the homeland of the Homonians. The whole series is called the Homonian Chronicles. So it's all about this super advanced, technologically advanced race of species. And we'll jump into it. Right now they just got into contact with Myropelia using an old Homonian base. They found a communication device, and now they're talking to them. So we'll jump into this. So there's a lot of context probably needed, but yeah, enjoy the ride for now. The picture on the screen became clearer by the second, and we now all face to face with 2 gentlemen in gold and white robes, backed by a clean white laboratory. "We did it!" John cheered. "This is Myropelia?" I asked. "Yes, whoever you are. You are contacting Myropelian Lab 436. This is a restricted communication device only for Homonian use. How did you come in possession of such a device?" one of the Homonians asked me. "Oh, yes, we found this machine in the old Homonian base here," I tried to explain, but wasn't sure how. "1 second, the other Homonian on the screen said, and began scrolling through some holographic display that was at an angle, making it impossible for me to read. "It says you're on Orbem, is that right?" "Correct," I answered, as well as we all were staring at the Homonians on screen. It was dead quiet. Oh, here we go. Gotta get rid of this person. As is. We were all enamored by the glowing clear picture. It looked as if I could reach through and touch them. "This point has been inoperable for thousands of years." "Are any of you Homonian?" the first man said, and began leaning closer to the screen until only his face was in view. "It would be a bit tough to explain why we are, guys. I was actually just in Myropelia recently, John began to talk to the two on screen. You were? That's not possible. Orbem don't come to Myropelia. No one comes to Myropelia. The two began looking at each other in confirmation. Wait, didn't you hear about all the commotion the other day? A fairy and a cannon showed up in the square, the second man said to his partner. What? When? The first asked, incredulous. I don't know. I was on leave, the second said solemnly. Look, can you two just go get Calderon? He'll know what's going on, John continued. Then the two Harmonians' eyes went wide for a moment. Boop, 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 boop. And they walked off screen and began muttering to each other incoherently. They returned in view with their arms crossed. We'll need to lock the portal gateway if you want to talk to a council member. Let's say he's actually a chancellor. To the chancellor. Security and all. Wait, we can use that. Oh wait, we can use that? I asked, pointing at the tall cabinet on the right side of the wall-to-wall machine. One of the Harmonians swiped and poked at his display a few times with several beeps in confirmation of his interactions. Not anymore, you can't, he said with a smug smile. Just grab Calderon, you gobshites. Genie blew up, causing the two to flinch instinctively, even though we were in different universes. They both ran off screen, and the glass picture changed to the previous shield with the M in it. I can't believe this worked, I exclaimed with a large smile. Unbelievable. So that was Myropelia. We were talking to actual Harmonians. Corlin would be the one taking over, Corlin said with large sparkling eyes. Funny looking clothes, huh? Genie commented. And John nodded. So, Calderon is the one that Graham has been talking to? I asked John. Yeah, he's the one of the lead guys. If anyone can help us get Graham back, I'm sure he can, John said confidently. Suddenly the picture switched back to the lab scene from before, and one of the Harmonians was on screen. Alright, Calderon is on his way. We're way behind on our comprehensive inventory of the Orbem site. Do you mind answering a few questions about the current state of your location? The lone man said with raised eyebrows. He held his finger hovering over his green holographic display. John and I looked at each other and shrugged, and I confirmed, sure. Wonderful. We'll start with infrastructure. From 1 to 5, please rate the quality of the building's current condition. 1 being unsatisfactory and 5 being very satisfactory. The man began a survey. 1, John answered, and the Harmonian's eyes grew large while still looking at his display. From 1 to 5, please rate the living accommodations. 1, I answered, causing the man's eyes to wince as if in pain. From 1 to 5, let's add a little. From 1 to 5, can you rate the security system's efficacy? Actually, this would probably be 5. Corinder answered, and at that point the surveyor shut this display and walked off screen. I mean, what did he expect after thousands of years, really? John said and gave a short laugh. Yeah, let's say 3. That's funnier. Alright. A new person walked into view. This time he was much older in appearance with a long white beard and eyebrows. John and Corinder's eyes sparkled at the sight, so I assumed that man was Calderon. Well, hello there. Quite a surprising sight, I must say. Is that you there, John? Oh, and Corinder too. How wonderful you got the old Orbem-based communicator working, Calderon said with a warm smile. Yeah, it was more difficult finding it than fixing it, really, John commented. Someone appears to be missing, though. Where's Graham, I wonder? Calderon asked, and he began to frown as he looked around at our group. That's fine. Hello, Calderon. I'm Iona. Graham is the reason we've contacted you. He has gone missing, I explained, and Calderon began to twist his robe with one of his hands. Yeah, we really need your help getting in contact with him. He's been transported somewhere, but his arm was left behind, so he can't get back, John said, and Calderon squinted. Transported without his arm? How peculiar. He appeared to have perfect control of his blade while here. Do you suspect foul play? Calderon asked with a suspicious tone. We're not sure. There's no way he could transport anywhere safely that he's never been before, and without his device for that matter. It was as if the blade had a mind of its own and sent him away, I began to explain. All of my theories up until that point were just an attempt. All my theories up until that point were just an attempt to make connections that would make sense of the situation. Let's see what Graham has to say, Calderon said plainly. He began to pull out a white sphere from his robe pocket. He hovered his wrinkly palm over it, and a green holographic display appeared above the hand that held the sphere. There we go. Let's see what we're going to say. Okay, in this sphere. Okay, everyone in the room was silent, and we stared at Calderon intensely. Nothing was happening. Calderon's bushy, long white eyebrow quirked up after a moment of staring into his display screen. What's happening? I asked with concern in my voice. Oh dear. This is an issue indeed, Calderon said to himself. Well, we all heard, and I noticed a few anxious expressions from the others. Everything all right, Calderon? Coriander asked, causing Calderon to flinch a bit as if he forgot we were watching. I don't understand it, really. I had no problem contacting Graham not too long ago. One of the clearest connections I've heard from Orbem. But just like the others, his signal has simply vanished, Calderon explained and began to scratch his temple. Others? Vanished? You don't mean, I began to say, but my heart sank at the implication of his statement. We were too late? Were we too late? Defenseless and alone, had Graham succumbed to the dangers of Orbem and the unknown? Even Jarok's nose wouldn't be able to tell us if he were alive. My eyes welled up with tears, and I latched onto John, burying my face into his metal arm. It hurt, but I didn't care. Oh no, my dear, I was not insinuating our friend Graham had passed on. I apologize for my choice of words. No, from what I gather... let's say... Calderon corrected himself. No, from what I gather, our brethren on Orbem have simply devised a way to block the crystalline portion of the brain that all our kind are born with. I felt silly for jumping to conclusions. Better. You're all born with a crystal in your head? Jeannie asked with a tinge of a smile. Of sorts, yes. It is why we Homonians have such a deep connection with crystal application and anatomy. A connection as subconscious as breathing, really, Calderon said, and his eyes sparkled. Always knew that lad had rocks in his head, Jeannie joked and lightened the mood, causing a few snickers out of the group. So, is there nothing you can do to bypass the block? John asked, bringing us back to reality. We've been trying for a millennium. Every now and then a signal will return for an hour or two, but it's never lasted. It never lasts, and our calls are never answered, Calderon said in a defeated tone. Then Graham must have contacted the Homonians in the north. It's the only explanation why his signal's being blocked. I made the connection. With that, I felt a wave of relief as the thought he was with his kind and safe. I felt a wave of relief at the thought he was with his kind and safe. And that is very plausible. That is a very plausible explanation, my dear. If Graham leaves the cause of disruption, I'll be able to make contact immediately. There's no telling how long that might be, though, Calderon said, and I knew he was right. He must have noticed our nervous expressions at the thought of leaving the barracks without knowing when to return, because he quickly added, I will be able to notify you when Graham's signal returns. I'm sending a gift through the portal point. Calderon walked off screen for a moment, then I noticed the tall cabinet door's perimeter began to glow green a few times. John ran over to it and opened the door, then pulled out a white sphere like the one Calderon was holding. The device you're holding has limited abilities so far away from our Arbilia's systems, but I will be able to send a noticeable signal to notify you all when to return. I suggest whoever can move the quickest Should hold on to it to avoid missing our chance, Calderon instructed. Adieu. We all agreed that I would hold on to it, as at top speed, I could make it to the barracks from Kenneth Village in a matter of hours. Thank you for everything, Calderon. Hopefully we hear from you very soon, I thanked the old Harmonian, and we all said our farewells, then left the barracks. Out of sheer hope, we decided that we would camp out in front of the barracks that night, just in case Graham became available sooner than later. We considered sleeping in the barracks themselves, but for some reason it was much more comfortable sleeping in the tents out in the open air than the cold, hard, stale rooms that were inside the building. It was a wonder that Graham slept there regularly, but I remembered his dedication to his work and figured that sleep was not how he spent most of his time. The night came, and I held out as long as I could, but succumbed to the warmth of the fireplace. I was in Spinebeck Village, Waymore, and even the Nocturne Forest, but there was one constant that followed me to all those locations. Okay. Someone I didn't expect to ever find in my dreams. Valdag! I shrieked as I sat up in a cold sweat, breathing heavily. Why was he there? My dreams were non-distinctive, and I was barely able to remember them except for the unsettling clear vision of Valdag watching me. By a tree, sitting in our group near a pool, as a cart vendor. It was the black and white-haired mage we met the previous day before entering the barracks. There were sounds of talking and cooking happening outside of my tent, so I tried to forget the horror I was revisiting and went to join my friends. Corner was cooking some lumps of meat above a fire. John was getting his mech armor on as Jeannie rifled through her pack. Oh yeah, I gotta ditch you guys. Goodbye. The only person I did not see was Corlin. Morning, love. You look like shite, Jeannie greeted me with an accurate description. Yeah, had trouble sleeping for some reason. Hey, have you seen Corlin? I asked, and Jeannie looked around for a second and shrugged. I'm gonna go take a look. The Duke's tent was open, and it appeared it had already been cleared out, so... So I headed to the old Hopemonian base in case he decided to look around or something. As I entered the first floor, my assumption was confirmed, and I saw Corlin shifting in a moss-covered chair, chewing on his fingernails. He had his other hand clenching onto the sword that laid on his side, with a grip that made me think he was ready to defend himself. Corlin? I approached carefully with a soft voice. He was a nervous person to begin with, but his demeanor had me fearing for his health. At my voice, Corlin flinched sharply and began to blink rapidly, and quickly lowered his hand from his mouth. Oh, Yona, it's you, Corlin said hesitantly. Sorry if I startled you. Is everything alright? I noticed you were gone. Oh, I do apologize if I've caused you worry. I just decided to go for a walk, Corlin said while casting his gaze down with slumped shoulders. Well, we should be packing up shortly to head back to Kenneth Village, I began, saying, but couldn't help but pry into his peculiar mood. Is there anything bothering you? I won't claim to know you well enough to substantiate this statement, but you seem upset. Corlin looked up at me, showing the bags under his eyes. Trouble sleeping is all. You and me both. I was having horrible dreams all night, I said without intention, but Corlin's eyes began staring at me without seeing. Nightmares? He asked in almost a whisper. Not exactly. For the most part, they were recollections of past events during my journeys around Orbem. The only unsettling part was, I began to say, but was interrupted by Corlin, was the fact that Valdag was in every event. The Duke finished my sentence and my face turned white. How did you... He visited my dreams as well. Quite brazen, really, given my royal status and knowledge. Only a small few possess this ability. Dream Infuse is indeed an ancient magic. Are you telling me he was actually in my dreams? Why? I asked while shaking my head. The thought of another penetrating my deepest thoughts was both violating and terrifying. I do not believe the infuser is physically in the dream, but from what I've heard, the main use was for information extraction. All the more troubling that Valdek thought it prudent. Yeah, that's a little bit. Corlin explained. Explained. Boop, boop, boop. Nice. All the more troubling that Valdek thought it prudent to use it on me. Boop, boop, boop. He began tapping his finger on the arm of the chair he sat in. Suddenly I heard John's voice calling my name from afar. We better get going. It seems like there's much to discuss. I'm just glad we have someone as knowledgeable on elven affairs as you are, I said with a smile at Corlin. He returned it as cheerfully as he could given his exhaustion. Given? Is that not the right word? Could, given his exhaustion. Yeah, that's fine. We both left the barracks and rejoined the group. Everyone was actively packing up the last of the camping gear into their given bags. Where'd you go, lass? Jeannie asked in an angry tone. Yeah, and why'd you come back with him? John asked in a hushed voice and pointed his thumb in Corlin's direction. Jeannie's eyes grew large and she grabbed my arm. What in the Orbem are you doing, having a banter with that elf? Relax, you two. I'm more than capable of handling myself, thank you. And there was nothing banter about our conversation, I said to the two investigators who were now holding each other and staring at me openly. What? Jeannie looked over at Corlin, who was helping Corinder clean off a pan. Now, I won't say Graham's exactly shifted material, but I definitely don't know what you see in that one. John looked at Jeannie and said in an offended tone, Ridiculous. Any woman would be lucky to shift Graham. Oop, I spelled Graham wrong. There's no way Iona could be more attracted to Goldilocks over there. Jeannie, John, will you control yourselves? I said as the two began making me flustered with their inappropriate conversation. I said to the two. They were making me flustered with their inappropriate conversation as if my life were some sort of soap opera for them to comment on. My opinions on anyone's physical appearance were none of their business. To avoid any other awkward conversations with the nosy duo, I checked in with Corinder. Checked in with Corinder. As he was backing up, wasn't he just cleaning a pan? Hold on. Corlin, who was helping Corinder by cleaning off a pan. So that means he was probably also cleaning up. To avoid the awkward, who I had to convince. Okay. I checked in with Corinder as he was packing up a squirrel-like animal. Became a source of distraction, and I had to convince Corinder to leave it alone. Alright. There we go. Any signal from Calderon? Corinder asked me, and I pulled out the sphere we had received from the portal cabinet. It had a slick and glossy finish, lending itself to be difficult to hang on to. To make sure it was functioning, I placed it in the center of my palm as I saw Calderon do, then waved my hand over it. With impressive response time, a green holographic display emanated from the top of the sphere. It didn't matter which side of the device I held, the display always remained a few inches above the device's topmost point in my hand. Even when I clasped the device with my fingers, it remained active and undisturbed. Swiping and poking a few times at the display didn't result in anything. As Calderon noted, the device had no real functionality outside of myophilia, beyond being a sort of futuristic beeper. The fact it responded to my hand at all told me what I needed to know, so I closed the display and put it back in my cloak's pocket. Guess we better head back. Doesn't seem like there's much use hanging around here any longer, I said with a defeated tone. We all began to walk towards Blackhawk Forest. As we walked, Jeannie and John kept giving Corlin a side-eyed look as if still upset by my fictional competition against Graham they recreated. Jeannie and Graham kept giving Corlin a side-eyed look as if still upset by the fictional competition against Graham they created. I guess that makes sense. Boom, dum, 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 dum. After a bit of walking, I noticed we were at the same spot where the mage confronted us previously, and began to receive a flood of nervous feelings throughout my body. What was he looking for in my head? I began to think as I looked at the fragmentation lines on my arms. They had faded a bit since my original syringe procedure. To take my mind off Valdak's mysterious motives, I decided to get some coordination practice in during our long and slow trek through the ancient battlefield. Usually I split my arms one at a time, but I thought it would be much more useful to separate them simultaneously. The process was also quite slow, so I already began thinking of ways to optimize it and create an instant split maneuver for quick access to forearmed combat. Closing my eyes, I focused on both arms at the same time and started the fragmentation. The indentation at the center of my arms grew deeper and deeper until it had turned into an opening, allowing my arms to separate. The split was no longer painful to my mind. It now became a recognizable feeling my body could perform, like cracking your knuckles or sneezing. To try some real-world applications, I began picking up various pieces of armor and shattered swords with alternating hands and swung them around, then threw them one by one in succession. With my enhanced strength, I figured each one of my arms were still 3 times as strong as an average fit female, but coordinating that strength was still difficult. Hey, looks like you're getting the hang of being a bug, huh? Coroner commented, causing John to stifle a laugh. I do envy bugs. It must be easier to control extra limbs if you were born with them, I retorted, unfazed by his jest. Think fast, John called out abruptly and hurled an old rusty helmet at me. I almost didn't see it coming, but at the last second turned and caught the helmet with both my right hands. Still thinking like a normal dual-armed woman. Let's just say human. That sounds better in my face. John was right. My natural instincts wanted to use my arms in their singular form. Still thinking like a normal dual-armed human. Okay. The idea of more unexpected projectiles seemed like a plausible immersion therapy to help break the habit. Hey John, if you don't mind, could you throw things at me periodically? I asked seriously. Then John quirked an eyebrow in response. I asked seriously. John quirked an eyebrow in response at first, but ultimately an excited smile grew on his face. You bet, he said with a grin. Miss, can I do it too? Coroner asked. Hey, me too, Jeannie added. Okay, anyone who wants to throw stuff at me, feel free to do so. Just please give me a warning, I relented. It seemed I gave my instructions too late as Coroner lobbed a stick at me landing on top of my head. Stick at me that landed on top of my head. Sorry, Coroner apologized with a sheepish smile. Luckily, the stick was quite old and hollow and caused no damage other than to my hair, so I quickly threw it up in a new bun. After several hours of slow travel and fully regretting my decision to allow everyone to throw objects at me, we were getting close to the village. It was getting quite dark, and I noticed Coriander was stopping every now and then to listen intently. Jeannie was clutching on to John with her head bearing into his side. And even I began to feel a sense of unease. There was commotion up ahead of our group, and we all stopped abruptly. "Quick, get off the path," Coriander whispered loudly at the group. Oops. We all jumped to the right into some bushes. There wasn't enough room for therefore blah blah blah. Yep, don't need to say that anymore. Everyone in the group went dead silent, and all I could hear was the sound of my racing heart. The sounds of a dozen sloppy steps and grotesque grunts and phlegm hacking grew louder as a group walked down the path we were just on a moment before. My curiosity got the better of me as I peered out of the bush to get a look at the strangers. Though it was getting dark, I could make out most of the details. There were 5 or 6 stout creatures with skinny, vascular arms, ending in long claws and protruding sharp teeth pointing in all sorts of directions. Their eyes were such a strong fluorescent yellow that they looked as if they were glowing in the dim light. They appeared to be wearing a slimy brown-colored set of leather armor. The interest of seeing the new species distracted me initially from noticing what they were dragging. A trail of blood on the ground behind them led to a few large lifeless black-furred animals pulled by ropes tied to their legs. It was too late before I noticed what those animals were, as Coriander had figured out first, and growled in an otherworldly anger I had not yet heard emitted from him. "Vorsish!" Alright, next chapter. Now we're going back to Graham. And it appears my computer is running slow. Oh, okay. YouTube looks good. Alright. Okay. Oh wait, no. We're not back with Graham, sorry. Chapter 16. We're still with them. We're about to fight the goblins. Okay. Send Graham's arm. Coriander shot out of the bushes where we hid and impressively landed directly in front of the group of what I assumed were goblins. They flinched and jumped back in surprise at the anchored cannon. "Coriander!" I called out to him, causing 3 of the goblins in the back to look towards me. It wasn't a second later when the sounds of whirling gears from John's mech could be heard, as the familiar offensive mode was triggered and the mech armor man barreled towards the goblin group without warning. Jeannie. Take Quarlin to Canis Village. I instructed Jeannie, who looked as if she would protest at first. This is a chance for me to bring Jeannie into the fight. No fucking way, lass. You're on. You're on your own, Duke. Jeannie protested. She didn't even hesitate and pulled out 4 throwing knives. letting 2 fly instantly. At the goblin John. The goblin in front of John. John narrowly missed being hit with the throwing knife. And got to the side of the goblin crew as he launched a mammoth gauntlet punch into mammoth gauntlet punch into the closest goblin's head, snapping its neck due to his fist's overpowered impact. The other two, one fell with knives embedded in its neck and chest, while the other let go of its Coalfoot prize and pulled out a gnarly shaped sword to defend itself from the surprise attack. From itself. From the surprise attack of John. Coriander had already slashed the throat of the leading goblin, leaving it to lie on the floor hemorrhaging. The second goblin managed to embed his blade in Coriander's thigh, but filled with rage and adrenaline, the Canth grabbed the goblin by the neck in his jaws and shook it around furiously. Another goblin had its sword raised, ready to strike down Coriander from behind, but I turned up my speed and used the velocity to kick and land a drop kick. To jump and land a drop kick to its stomach, launching it several feet into a large tree trunk behind. It appeared to have lost its breath as it held its abdomen and remained on the ground, so I turned my attention to the sword-wielding goblins fighting John. Attention to some sword-wielding goblins fighting John and Jeannie. One goblin's sword was crushed by John's hand and thrown off to the side as the second goblin growled and swung its sword overhead with all its power. At Jeannie. Jeannie, I cried in a panic. But the sword bounced off Jeannie's arm, leaving not even a mark, but the force knocked her to the floor. Seeing his weapons lack Effectiveness. See, it's, I don't know if it's a girl or boy. The goblin turned to John and swung for the fences. John was too fast and leaned to avoid his head being cleaved in two, and instead causing the sword to bounce off his shoulder. The reverberation of the metal blade landing on a stronger metal resulted in the goblin shrieking in pain as it dropped its sword. "Shouldn't have done that, mate," John said to the repulsive creature and engaged his flamethrower directly at its face. The flaming goblin ran in circles and fell to the ground, attempting to put itself out. Coriander lunged at the goblin that had its sword crushed by John, but it was already in John's gauntlet's grip by the throat, unconscious. John pulled the lifeless creature away from Coriander's attack. "Hey, wait a minute. Might need this one for questioning, eh?" the level-headed metal man said, in a bit of a horrifyingly calm way considering our current setting. Coriander wasn't listening and tried to lunge at it again, but John held him back with his other hand. "Coriander, please, you need to control yourself. We must get the culprit back to the village," I attempted to reason with the enraged Kenneth. The wild Kenneth's eyes were glowing blood red as he snarled in my direction, but then looked at his friends on the floor. A sense of realization washed over Coriander's face as a pained, watering gaze shone in his eyes, which returned to their warm honey yellow color. "Oh no, I'm so sorry, friends. I lost it, didn't I?" Coriander asked and looked at me with a wrinkly brow. "Come on, the rest of our group have already returned to the village." No they haven't. Come on. Corlin. Already. Ran ahead and returned to the village. Grab Vorshish and run as fast as you can. You and I will get the other two, John instructed. The Coriander was lost in the moment, so John grabbed his face. So Genie, how about that? Genie grabbed his face in his free hand and turned it towards John's, and turned it towards hers. "Hey! Dog. We need to move, quick." Finally, Coriander got the message and swiftly threw Vorsis over his shoulder and galloped away towards Canada Village. John and I picked up the remaining fallen culprit and headed in the same direction. They were in a horrible state with several lacerations, all bleeding profusely. The gates that led to the village were already open and Haram was not at his post, so we let ourselves in. Without any delay, we headed straight for Keldrin's hut. There was a large group of Kenneth huddling around the opening of Keldrin's place, but as soon as they noticed us, began to part and make a path. Hey, wait, what the hell? Whoops. Okay, there we go. Cries of terror showered the quiet village air as a handful of Kenneth saw what John was carrying in his other hand. "John, I'll take the culprit. Get out of here. You're scaring everyone," I urged the unaware armored man whose eyebrows shot up in response. He handed me the culprit he was carrying and apologized to the villagers around him, then headed off towards Pax's home with his goblin. Suddenly, the goblin wriggled out of John's grip and more shrieks of terror sounded as the bleeding monster growled at everyone around it. Thought you'd be useful, buddy. Don't make any sudden moves. John warned the creature. He held up his arm, pointing his flame throwers. What do they call that? Nozzle, whatever. And in the goblin's direction. Before John could do anything, the goblin pulled a vial out of its pocket and threw it on the floor, breaking it, shattering it. John backed away. And the goblin erupted in flames. As the fire dissipated, I could see the spot where the goblin was standing was now empty, except for a piece of scorched earth. A patch of scorched earth. Scorched. No T in scorched. There we go. There was no time to investigate what just happened. So with a cannon in either arm, I carried the two into the hut's opening. Inside were Coriander, Kalia leaning over Keldrine as she went to work on Vorsish. Lay them on the padding over there, Keldrine ordered me without looking. How can I help? I asked. Get Genie. We'll need all the hands we can get. These three are in horrible condition. Keldrine said, causing Coriander to grit his teeth, exposing his sharp fangs. Calm down, Corey. You did everything you could, Kalia attempted to cool Coriander's fiery temper. Coriander wasn't interested in listening and stormed out of the hut shouting, I should have been there. Or I should have been here. Corey, Kalia called out to Coriander and chased after him. I wanted nothing more than to follow them and tell Coriander that it wasn't his fault, but I knew in that moment saving the victims was top priority, so I ran to Jeannie's home, where she and the others were waiting, and took her to Keldrine's, where she and Coriander, Corland, were waiting, and took her to Keldrine's. We spent hours in the medical hut, working through the night and through the morning. The number of wounds requiring attention mixed with the foul condition the goblin's weapons created. That didn't make any sense. The number of wounds requiring attention mixed with the foul condition the goblin's weapons created left us in a losing battle. 3 wounded Coalfoot entered the hut the previous night. 1 left the following day. Keldrine wept, and her tears increased exponentially after each loss. Jeannie and I could no longer hold it together as well, and I felt the horrible pain of death from such a tight community. Vorsish didn't make it. The war everyone was warning us about had come to our door. The worst part was it was a small taste of what was yet to come. My mind went back to the barracks, the battlefield. How many bodies were slain there? We played with their armor and broken weapons as if we were a junkyard of unwanted trash. I was disgusted with myself. Those bodies could be more of our friends. I was no soldier. I had never been in a large-scale battle or built a tolerance to death. Anxiety filled my tired mind and I had to be alone. So I returned to my home to lay down. I wanted nothing more than to close my eyes and fall into sleep's safe embrace and let go of all the anguish I had witnessed. It was easy to lose sight of that Orbem is reality. I had been surrounded by unbelievable technology for years in which a full immersion virtual reality simulation was easy to comprehend. Every now and then, the fantasy all around triggered a part of my brain to speculate if it was all a work of fiction. Seeing the horrors of battle and feeling the agonizing pain and sorrow emanating from the Kenneth reminded me that it was all too real. There were no second chances, and all the conscious beings we've come into contact with in the time we had spent in Orbem were as authentic and fragile as any of us terrestrials. It was a miracle, but I managed to fall asleep even with the heart-wrenching images and stench of blood flashing through my mind. When I awoke the following morning, it was as though the world was in mourning, as a dull, thick fog rolled through the streets and homes of Kenneth Village. It was like a scene out of an old zombie film as the villagers moved lethargically with blank stares. From my conversations with the Kenneth, I did not think death was an uncommon occurrence. Though sad and unwanted, their attitude was that if it was inevitable, as all things lived and all things died in the world. It was just a matter of time. No, the collective helplessness I believed everyone faced was because of the manner of the deaths. Goblins. The Kenneth viewed the sighting of goblins as a bad omen, and that brought devastation to Orbem. Knowing the goblins were tied to Cormir doubled the anxiety they instilled in the Kenneth. We were a clear mind from sleep. With a clear mind from sleep, I knew exactly what we needed to do to help the village and bring peace back to the wholesome villagers. We had to get Graham back. No doubt he was the key to a counterattack on the enemy. Now with his insights from the time he spent with the Orbem Homonians, I had little doubt he would return with a plan. After getting some fresh air, I returned to my room to get dressed and visit Corinder. He was deeply affected by the loss of Vorsish. The look in his eyes during our fight with the goblins was terrifying. To think he was capable of such brutality was quite surprising. As I walked over to my wardrobe, I noticed out of the corner of my eye a red glow under my bed covers. I quirked my head to the right and squinted at it before the realization flashed in my brain. "Calderon!" I screamed to no one and jumped onto my bed, then threw the covers off to reveal the sphere the Homonian sent us. It wasn't white, but now it was glowing bright red over and over. Suddenly it appeared Calderon was summoning us. There was no time to spare. If Calderon had Graham's signal, it could easily go away any minute. I ran towards the front gates. Bargo's forge was on the way, so I gave it a look and was elated to see John hammering away on some red-hot metal. "John, it's happening!" I screamed out without stopping, and he managed to catch a glance at my face before I was gone. There was no time to spare, so I unleashed my full velocity for the first time ever. At that speed, I was at risk for collisions, so I put all my focus on the objects in front of me. Quickly, I hit my first roadblock, namely the front gate. There was no time for me to wait for Harem to open them, so I utilized the force of my momentum to leap up one of the thick tree trunk posts, then flipped over the top, nearly catching myself on the sharpened tip. I landed on the other side of the wall with a few rolls, easing the impact on my body, and continued running. One tree after another came into my path, but I managed to dodge each of them as I saw the edge of Blackclaw Forest coming into view. Now that the trees were sparser, I was able to fully lean forward and launch myself towards the barracks before we missed Graham. Calderon said he would try to contact and hold him, but there was no telling what condition or area he was in, so communication could be difficult. After leaping over several chariots and large skeletons of various beasts, the barracks were in sight. My excitement empowered me to move even faster, but the increase in speed came with its own dangers. My eyes were on the large gray building in the distance for a moment, so I didn't see a pile of armor fast approaching. The second I noticed, I jumped as fast as I could, but my foot caught the top of the pile, causing me to flip over head over heel, and crash into a different pile of some various decayed wood and steel items. The pile exploded on impact, and I was left lying on my back with the wind knocked out of me. As I laid there catching my breath, I began to feel a horrible pain coming from my left foot. It felt as though it was swelling increasingly every second, but I didn't want to look. No, not now, you idiot, I cursed my carelessness. There was no helping it. The barracks were too close to stop, so I forced myself to confront my injury and moved the plank of wood off my foot, revealing a horrible discovery. The heel of my boot was where my toes should have been. The Holy Grail syringe accelerated my body's natural healing process, so there was no time to wait in correcting my backwards foot. Otherwise, it would be much harder to fix later. There was a chunk of solid-looking wood next to me that I promptly put in my mouth, and I bit down on. Here we go, I mumbled to myself through the piece of wood and brought my foot to my chest as I sat on the ground. The procedure would require a good deal of force to relocate the foot in its proper position. A firm grip on both ends of my boot was required as I tilted my head back and closed my eyes, then screamed as loud as I could through the wood. With all my strength, I agonizingly contorted the twisted foot back into its proper position. My eyes watered at the shock of the procedure, and I fell backwards and stayed lying down to process what just had happened as I studied my breathing. Blech. I spit the chunk of wood out of my mouth and screamed again. It was time to get to the barracks, so I got up and limped as fast as I could. There was no telling what sort of damage I had done without proper x-rays, but I hoped there weren't any bone fragments that needed to be dealt with. With my rate of healing, it began to feel like a simple bad sprain. Every second I could pick up some more momentum, and soon I arrived at the Hammonian stronghold. Every moment I wasn't already talking to Calderon made me angry. It was possible I already missed my chance due to my stupidity. Finally, I reached the top floor and I ran my hand down the wall looking for the room that held the communication machine. After finding the room, I rushed to the back inner room and that's kind of dumb. I rushed to the wall-to-wall machine and saw that there were already someone on the screen waiting for me. Ah, someone has arrived, the man said as I approached the screen. I was able to see it was the old white-haired Hammonian Calderon. Yes, Calderon, am I too late? Iona, is that you? A second voice sounded that brought instant tears to my eyes as my tear ducts processed the man's voice before my brain could. Graham? My goodness, Graham, it's you. Yes, it's Iona, I said through sniffles. Calderon smiled, and I took a couple of deep breaths to calm down. Wow, it's so great to hear your voice. You have no idea how worried I've been about you and everyone else in Kenneth Village. It's really weird that this is happening all in my head, by the way, Graham said, and I could picture his goofy face saying every needless comment. I'm just happy to hear you're alive. We've all been so worried that the worst happened when you left suddenly. Why'd you leave your arm? I didn't mean to. I don't know. I don't think it's the best time to get into this topic, but I think it has something to do with phantom macro function that showed up in my blade when Calderon first contacted me. Graham suggested, and the implications... that's too much. Graham suggested... The implications of that were far beyond my comprehension at that moment. So I let him continue. I need you to send my arm. We tried to use your arm to transport us to you, but we didn't know where you were. Yeah, I'm sure there weren't any logs on that transport. I'll need to walk you through how to program my current coordinates. Shouldn't be too hard, Graham said simply, but there were two major issues with this ask. One was I had been thoroughly dumbfounded by Graham's device. Second was probably the worst part. I didn't bring your arm with me, I said in defeat. My intentions were to talk with Graham. I had never stopped to think that I would need what I would need after that point. Shit, Graham said and paused for a moment. Should have asked Doran for an escort so I didn't have to ninja my way back through the tunnels. I just couldn't wait to tell the brothers about their pardon. I guess I'll have to sit outside the tunnels until you can get it. Not sure how long I can hide from the trolls though. Trolls? I thought you were with the Harmonians, I asked with a quirked eyebrow. I was. They're at the top of this mountain where the trolls live and work. I just had to come back to the base to tell my new friends the good news about their banishment. Graham explained, as if I had any way of understanding that statement. Suddenly, I heard a door opening from the hallway. At first, I thought it might be one of the security bots, but was excited to be wrong as John came in. John, quick! I'm talking to Graham! I called out to him excitedly. Oh yeah? John said and ran over to me, but then looked at me with his eyebrows pushed together. That's just Calderon. Buddy! Is that a big beautiful man I hear? Graham said through the screen as John's eyes lit up and a giant bright smile grew on his face. Through the screen. Founder, you old dudes. What's the big idea scaring everybody with your vanishing act? John taunted while maintaining his big smile. Sorry, man, if I had the option, I probably would have stayed. Hasn't exactly been a picnic, especially with one arm, Graham said, as I imagined. Graham said, I imagined all the terrifying scenarios he might have encountered. There's no telling how lucky we were to be able to speak with him alive. Yeah. No telling how lucky we were to be able to speak with him. It was at that moment when I noticed John was holding something. My eyes grew large in recognition of the item. You brought it, I said to John, who looked at Graham's arm and then to me. Yeah, figured we needed to get him back, John said plainly. Ah, John, you brought my arm? Legend, Graham said with a tone of relief. The fact John was also there, along with the arm, was even more of a relief for me, as he was much more suited for handling Graham's instructions. Hey, Calderon, did you want to just sit that sphere in front of the camera or something? This will probably take a while. We don't want your arm falling asleep, John suggested. Quite kind of you, my child. Yes, I do think I will leave you all to it. If there's anything else I can do... why does this have a blue line? If there is anything else I can do for you, do not hesitate to ask. Graham, it's good to speak to you. We have much to discuss regarding the current state of the Orbem Harmonians. I trust you will allow me that, Calderon asked. Yeah, Calderon, I'll fill you in later. Thanks for setting this up. You really saved me, Graham finally responded. I didn't know why I say finally. Graham responded. With that, Calderon sat the device on the table near the communication system, then walked off screen tentatively. Alright, what do I do? John asked, getting right to business. Hold on one second, Graham said, and John and I looked at each other with confused expressions. The fact we were speaking directly into Graham's mind meant we had no audio from his surrounding. So if someone was talking to Graham or something happened to him, we'd have no indication. Are you still there, Graham? I asked to confirm he was okay. Yeah, sorry, I had to find another hiding spot. One of the Harmonian auto rock mover trucks picked up the boulder I was behind. Graham informed us that That reminded me just how important it was to move quickly. Take your time, buddy. We don't want you getting in trouble when we're so close to getting you back, John said and began stroking his eyebrow. I'm good now. Found an old crate I don't think they use anymore. Alright, let's get to work. Graham began his instructions. He told John to engage the holo display of the blade device and navigate through the menus until he got to the program that controlled manual transportations. Once there, John would just need to enter in a series of coordinates and that were over 100 characters long. Graham informed us that he was able to extract these coordinates to a lab inside the Homonians' temple by augmenting the function of one of their cube devices. He utilized their self-positioning feature that was used for tracking the device in case it was lost or the user needed to be tracked down. We were lucky Graham was the one that saw the coordinates, as he told us it was only a flash. It only flashed for a second before shorting the device out completely. The Homonian user was furious with him. John entered the coordinates carefully as Graham recited the characters one by one. John's breaths quickened as he bit his lip, and a bead of sweat began to form on his brow. 100 or so characters felt like 1,000,000 after a while, but after John finished, they both repeated each one 3 times to make sure there were no errors. Based on the length of the universal coordinate, I can only imagine if a single digit was off, that it could be sending Graham's arm to the Barren Sea or another universe entirely. Alright, I think that's it, John said as he wiped his forehead with his cloak. Should we check the coordinates again? I asked while pacing back and forth behind John. Come on guys, we've been over it a bunch of times. I know this is a big deal, but we just have to try it, Graham said with a bit of impatience in his tone. I couldn't blame him given his current location and what he had been through. Spending another second away from us probably felt like an eternity given how I felt every second he was in the north and in harm's way. Do it, I said to John, who looked at me and rubbed his sweaty palm on his cloak. Let's get our boy home, John said and gave me a reassuring smile, and engaged the submit query to the blade's device. John said. He gave me a reassuring smile, then engaged the submit query to the blade device. There was one beep, then the hull display closed, and the device beeped again. Crack! With the familiar sound of Graham's transport, his arm disappeared from in front of John, causing him to flinch. Did you do it? Graham asked with an excited tone. John looked back at me again and smiled brightly. I think so, Founder. Go get your arm and hurry home. I'm not looking forward to walking all the way back to the village again, John said with a hearty laugh. Wow, you have no idea how happy I'm going to be when I see that arm again. It'll take me a little time to get back into the temple, but I'll head straight to the barracks when I get my blade back. Man, just saying that seems unreal, Graham said and went silent for a moment. Hurry back, Graham, I said, but Graham didn't respond right away. Oh, hey, fancy meeting you here. Did you find the dragon? We could hear Graham talking, but it didn't appear to be directed at us. Graham? I asked timidly. And all we heard from Graham before the signal cut off was, wait, wait, wait! Alright. Chapter 17. A declaration of war. Ugh. I really do need to do one more chapter. But I could work on the video game. If anybody's here, would you rather me read another chapter or start working on the video game? If no one responds, I'll probably read another chapter. How many pages is this one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Whoa, that's a big chapter. That'll get me within 42 pages, which should be doable tomorrow. Let's do it. Let's read the chapter. This is a good chapter too. It's all very exciting. Alright, now this is Graham's chapter. That's noted right here. And it looks like my computer's running like shit anyways. So, probably doesn't matter that I am reading. My head was just smashed into by a very large and very agitated troll that I had tricked upon my initial arrival at the troll tunnels. There was a horrible ringing in my ears, and I tasted blood as my vision began to return slowly. There weren't any dragons, you sneak! I know what you did, lying to get past the gate. I almost lost my job again. Yor berated me like a child who caught me cheating at a board game. Ouch. Ugh. You sure that was me? I said while holding my bleeding head on the floor and attempted to collect my thoughts. Yor's reaction surprised me. I said while holding my bleeding head. I was sitting on the floor and attempted to collect my thoughts. Yor never forgets a voice, you liar, Yor shouted, and went to swing the club he hit me with previously at my head again. I rolled out of the way just in time, resulting in a deadly thud as the club slammed into the ground. Okay, you're right, I lied. Look. Womp. Womp. Look. I just really needed to get to the Harmonian Temple. Can't you tell? I'm a Harmonian. I tried to reason with the enraged toddler-minded troll. I don't care what you are. My job is to keep everyone out unless they tell me to open the gate. No one told me to open the gate, Yor explained. He lifted the club above his head with the intention of striking me again. Hold on, I called out, and Yor stopped and looked down at me with fire in his tiny eyes. Right. So no one told you to open the gate. But did they tell you not to open the gate? My question had the exact effect I was going for, as Yor's eyes changed from rage to confused in an instant. He lowered the club and put his long finger to his large bumpy nose and bit his bottom lip, exposing his horribly shaped yellow teeth. I called the boss on the gym thing. No, they did not tell me to not open the gate, Yor finally answered with careful enunciation. Well, there you go. Perhaps if you had talked to them a bit more, they might have told you to open the gate. I tried to stall, to allow my head to stop pounding so I could escape. Yor looked up and put his finger on his nose again, but after a short while, his enraged eyes returned and he lifted his club again. No! I got in trouble. You weren't supposed to go in, liar! Yor shouted and began to swing his club down on my injured form. And even if I thought to use magic, my brain was too messed up from the head wound to focus. So this is how I die, I thought between headaches. You're Trun's handle, an angry familiar voice screamed from the tunnel entrance, stopping Yor in his tracks. His beady eyes grew large, and he clumsily dropped his club onto his own foot. Ouch! What's wrong, cousin? Yor asked with a quiver in his voice. Another large troll walked over to us, revealing it was Truna, the life-saving troll from the conveyor belt of terror. She gently helped me to my feet. Just what do you think you're doing to that poor Harmonian? Truna scolded the scared troll. Yor looked to the floor and put his arms behind his back. He got me in trouble, he finally mumbled. You got yourself in trouble. Always looking for dragons. You can't go crushing Harmonians for your mistakes. Truna said to her cousin and lifted his chin. You apologize to this one. He's a nice person. Yor turned to me, still looking at the ground, and quickly said, Sorry. Sure, no problem, I said with a forced smile. Now go back to your post and do your job. No slacking this time, Truna said and pushed Yor in the direction of the entrance. Wow, you just keep saving me. Why? I asked Truna, who smiled. Her large ears turned pink as she shuffled her feet. It's just the right thing to do, she began to say, but she was avoiding making eye contact. She glanced at me quickly and finally said, "And I've just never met someone like you." My eyes went wide in realization. My head began to feel hot, and I wasn't sure if it was from the warm blood running down or the embarrassment at the awkward situation I was in. But I knew either way I was uncomfortable. Well, I can't say I've met Can't say I've met a woman like you. That's for sure, I answered truthfully, which in hindsight could have been taken in an omission of romantic feelings, though I was unfit to handle that scenario even without a concussion, or with a human for that matter. Truna didn't care of my attentions and just giggled as sweetly as her 10-foot tall frame could muster. "Graham, are you alright, young one?" Jiron asked, as him and Huron ran up to me. "Council members," Truna asked. "Council members?" Truna asked, recognizing the two trolls that approached us. "Hey guys, good news! And bad news," I began to say and stumbled a bit, almost falling over. Huron braced me with his massive hand as the brothers looked at me expectantly. "Good news is, I got you unbanished." Banistered. Oh yeah, that's right. "Good news is, I got you unbanistered." Banished. Unbanished. Huron and Jiron looked at each other with bright smiles. "Are you serious? That's wonderful news." "We knew you could do it," Huron cheered. "We can't thank you enough, Graham." "So what's the bad news?" Jiron asked. "What bad news?" I asked, confused by Huron and Jiron I asked, confused. Huron and Jiron looked at me also with confused expressions. Truna's expression soon joined our groups. "Oh, the bad news. I'm going to pass." I tried to finish my sentence, but finally succumbed to my head injuries and blacked out. When my eyes opened again, I was staring at bright white lights. "Oh no, I'm back in myropelia. I really did die," I said out loud to the shining lights above me. "No, sorry to correct you, but you're very much alive. Though that head wound of yours was quite severe. Your senescence blocker appears to be working well, otherwise you really would be dead," a monotone voice said from my left. "Senescence blocker?" I asked as I realized I was on top of a steel table. I soon realized I was on top of a steel table in some clean white room surrounded by Harmonians with masks on. "Oh, I made it back to the temple," I said to no one in particular. "Correct, you appear stable now. We'll leave you for a moment to rest and you should be able to leave in 30 minutes, the monotone masked Harmonian said, and with that last statement, excuse me. With that last statement, all the medical staff exited the room. Guess the trolls got me back. Hopefully it didn't cause too much trouble, I thought as I sat up, realizing I was very naked. With panic speed, I tried locating my clothes, but instead found what looked to be a Vestum device in the corner of the empty room, so I rushed over and stood in the marked square, keeping my eyes on the door that the staff exited, hoping no one would walk in. The device slowly scanned my body, and as it rose from my feet, I was clothed. My head was still pounding as my body healed slowly from the pounding, from the beating Ura delivered. My mind was recollecting the current events that happened leading up to my blackout, and suddenly my eyes shot open as I remembered my arm. Rushing through the exit, I ran aimlessly through the hallways and one room after another, trying to figure out where I was in the building. The lab recorded the coordinates in was on the 3rd floor, so I asked a nearby Harmonian doctor where the elevator was and quickly made my way there. Luckily, I hadn't run into Karadin or Doran, as I didn't want to delay my exit any longer than I had to. Since I wasn't in need of Doran's elven spy any longer, I had no reason to stick around. The lab was almost empty except for a few scientists fiddling on their cube holo displays, so I ran to the area where I broke the angry Harmonious device. "There you are," I said and whispered to myself. It was there, my arm, lying on the table I performed the coordinate export on. "Excuse me, sir, you can't just..." Hey, wait a minute, an angry Harmonian called out to me. You're the one who destroyed my cube. You know I won't get another one, get a new one for another week. What is that monstrosity doing on my desk? The fuming scientist pointed at my arm. Really sorry about your cube, and for leaving my arm on your desk. I'll just take that, and... I began to say, and I leaned over and picked my arm up. It was at that moment I noticed something was wrong. Well, pick it up and go. I'm very busy here, the scientist said while tapping her foot expectantly. My intention was to pick up my arm and go, but unfortunately for me, and the poor lady I had been inconveniencing, my mechanical arm's hand was phased through the desk. This was another example of how dangerous transportation could be, but I was lucky it was just a mechanical hand. Just give me a second, I said, and attempted to see if I could maneuver the hand out of the desk, but it was fully embedded. I looked at the already angered Harmonian and said, sorry. Then I turned back to her desk and used the only tool I had with me at that time, namely my body. The female Harmonian scientist watched as I backed up a few steps and ran full speed at the table and jumped into the air. What are you? She tried to protest, but it was too late, as I already gave her steely desk a body slam that would make a professional wrestler proud. The desk collapsed under my weight as the top cracked into several pieces. One of those pieces had my arm in the center of it. Now that it was free from the entire table, I was able to pick it up and reattach it to my right shoulder's empty iron socket. My mind had already connected with the neural links inside both my blade and the mechanical arm system, so I flexed and moved all of its joints to test the mobility after my violent extraction. John's engineering was tough as ever. Besides my new sharp, jagged steel table chunk bracelet, I was good as new. While I was distracted, I didn't notice the offended Harmonian run off, but as I began digging through my blade diagnostics, I ran some regression tests on the program and macro function. She returned with her boss. What the fuck? That's a long sentence. While I was distracted, I didn't notice the offending Harmonian run off. I went ahead and began digging through my blade diagnostics and ran some regression tests on the program and macro function. Soon, the annoyed scientist returned with her boss. Graham, what do you think you're doing? Grodin asked with an angry tone as he looked down at the damage I caused. Before I could respond, he looked at what I was doing, and his eyes grew large. Is that? Oh, hey, Grodin, just running some tests. Sorry about the mess. My arm transported off course a bit and ended up inside this lady's desk, I said while still looking at the holo display emanating from my wrist. Grodin slowly approached me and began peering over my shoulder. That interface is so clean and efficient. You don't paginate your lists? Crawdon asked from behind me. Thanks. I had a lot of time to work on the user experience since it took a while for me to get the transportations working. And you're right, I prefer infinite scroll. If you long press the center of the list like this, you can also fast scroll or filter, I explained with a big smile. No one appreciated my interfaces before, and since I had been impressed by the Harmonian's own system's efficient menus, it was a big compliment. Are you leaving? Quaden asked suddenly, with a concerned voice. As I let my automated tests run, I turned to the tech leader. Yeah, I really must get back home. Everyone is waiting for me at your guy's old base in the south. You have at least to say goodbye to Doran, Crawdon suggested, and I began to think that it would be a good idea. It also gave me a great opportunity to make sure nothing had happened to my arm since we'd been apart. Get close to me, I instructed Crawdon, whose beautiful eyes grew wide at the implication of my statement. I instructed Crawdon. His beautiful eyes grew wide at the implications of my statement. Wait, are we going to transport? He asked as a hidden smile grew slightly for the first time since I met him. I just waggled my eyebrows up and down in response, and Crawdon stepped right next to me. What about my desk? The still enraged Tremonian scientist asked, but I transported Crawdon and me at the same moment. We ended up inside the sanitation bubble at the long table where I assumed Doran would be. Like I never left, Doran was sitting patiently at the head of the table and looked slowly in Crawdon's and my direction as if we had simply walked into the room. My goodness. It's like nothing I've ever experienced before. Not even the portal's points are comparable. Doran, you must try it, Crawdon said in an uncharacteristically excited tone. Yes, I do believe I would like to experience this technological wonder. So all the rumors were true, were they? Doran asked rhetorically with a satisfied smile. Hey, Doran, I just came to say goodbye. I need to get back home and help my friends, I said to Doran, whose smile fell flat at my words. You have not forgotten the dire task I have assigned to you, correct? Doran asked, and Crawdon's eyes narrowed on me. As soon as I get things settled, I'll talk to my friends about your plan. If they all agree, we'll give you the distraction you need, I answered truthfully. Doran stared at me for a moment, possibly trying to read my body language for deceit. Then I welcome you back to the temple at any time. This is your home. We are your people. Don't forget that, Doran said with a warm smile and returned it. And I returned it. With those last kind words, I walked over to the Hamonian leader who stood in response, and I held my hand out. Doran took it in his and we shook hands. Suddenly, a transportation confirmation beep sounded. It was just as before when I was transported to the desert without warning. That is dessert. The desert. Wait, shit. Dessert is one S. Wait, no, it's two S's. I'm just gonna do a quick check. Desert is two S's. Okay, I'm correct. Duh. You don't know how to spell dessert? Okay. Oh shit, I said, and then the sound of a cracking whip shot through the room and abruptly everything around me changed. With no intervention from me, I was now standing in the exact location I was planning to transport to. With my workstation in front of me, I knew I was home. Well, this location brings back a few memories, Doran said to my right. Doran? What the hell are you doing here? I asked with a confused tone. Somehow my blade not only transported me, but Doran as well to the barracks. I'm not entirely sure. Did you mean to bring me along? He asked with his head quirked to one side. Definitely not. This thing really has a mind of its own for some reason. I wonder if that mystery macro was engaged again without my permission, I said as I dug into my blade's display. Crawdon was right. The feeling of your transports is truly amazing, Doran said. I was only half listening as I investigated my blade program and didn't respond right away. So, Graham, will you be able to return me to the temple? I'm ill-equipped for a long stay and needed there. Oh, right, of course. I'll get you back as soon as I know if it's safe to transport. Hey, why don't we go find my friends and you can meet some people from another universe? I suggested, but Doran's brow furrowed. I suppose safety is an utmost concern. Do please hurry with your investigations, Doran pleaded, and began to follow me as I headed for the hallway. You're gonna love John, I began to say, but when I looked back at Doran, I noticed he was no longer following me. In fact, he wasn't moving at all. He looked frozen in time without breathing or blinking. Oh shit, I said as past scenarios played through my head. Without thinking, I turned to run out of the room and find the others, but it was too late. Whatever captured Doran got me in that moment, and I was stuck a few inches off the ground in a running pose. The room filled with black smoke, and the blood drained from my face. It appeared my secret admirer was back for another visit, and based on who I was hanging out with, I could only imagine the mood he was going to be in. Coromir materialized as expected, but I couldn't turn my head to look, so I only heard a poof of smoke, then the sound of a solid footsteps. Eventually the sorcerer wandered into my view and approached my face much closer than I was comfortable with. He wore a fake smile with a set jaw as he put his index finger to my forehead and spun me around a few times until I finally faced Doran. The Ammonians' leader's eyes were the only moving thing as they glared at Coromir with a look of defiance. Well, 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 what have we here? I'd love to say I was surprised to see you both, but I suppose you know by now that would be a false statement, Coromir said as he continued to smile and look between Doran and me a few times. Not surprised? I thought for a moment, but my brain went into overdrive connecting a series of events that all pointed to the same conclusion. Coromir waved his hand and suddenly Doran's and my head regained movement. I stretched my jaw around for a second before responding. Yes, Graham, I know you already figured it out, the big twist per usual. Let's not spoil it for the Orbem Mortar's ex-leader now. Coromir said in a mocking tone. My old friend, you have not aged a day as expected. I trust my arrival was your doing, Doran said with a surprising amount of confidence given the circumstances. Too right you are, Doran. Graham and his friends played their parts to perfection, Coromir said, then chuckled dryly. The sounds of footsteps were growing louder, and as what I assumed were my friends approached. The sounds of footsteps were growing louder as what I assumed were my friends. The sounds of footsteps were growing louder as what I assumed were my friends approached my room. What I assumed were my friends approached my room. Okay. Right on schedule, Coromir said, then snapped his fingers, causing my head to freeze again, stopping me from warning John and Iona about Coromir's arrival. The cocky evil magician put his slender black nailed finger to his lips and shushed me, then he faded into a soft smoke plume. He must have still been in the room as Doran and I were continued to be unable to move. And I continued to be unable to move. John and Iona quickly jogged into my room, but I was facing the other way, so I could only hear them. Graham! Iona called out to me, hearing my voice in person after such a long time made my heart jump. Hearing her voice. I thought I just missed her, but it wasn't until that moment when I knew just how much I missed her. Can't believe you're back, Founder, John said with a hearty laugh, but it quickly died down when I didn't respond or turn around. Who's that? Iona asked, due to what I expected was Doran's appearance. Did you bring a Hammonian back with you? Is that your dad? John asked with an astonished tone. Iona gasped audibly, as if my silence was confirmation of John's question. I could hear Iona approaching me slowly, but before I noticed, it had become silent once again as a puff of black smoke returned to my side. Ah, John, Ms. Negrescu, how lovely it is to see you all again. No hard feelings, I trust. You see, my main goal in causing you so much anguish was to get this, Coromir said, and then snapped his fingers, causing a poof of black smoke to fade into a Hammonian syringe. It was the exact syringe he stole that day, the day we fought in a deadly battle on top of Nocturne Castle. Things were different then that day. My understanding of Orbem and magic had grown considerably. My friends were with me. There also was a Hammonian with a long history of ample knowledge of Coromir's weaknesses standing in front of me. Well, no reason to delay this, I guess, I thought, and gave myself an internal smile as my lips were still frozen in place. In my mind, I gave my blade the mental commands to initiate a handy macro I developed to break magic spells. As soon as it engaged, Coromir's body glitched from smoke to physical, as if resetting, and everyone began to move again. Coromir glared at me with bared teeth as he put his hand over his heart. That was a nasty trick. I suppose there is no use in paralysis any further, Coromir complained. With that, John's mech began to whirl and grind as it engaged in offensive mode, and Iona took a fighting stance as her arms began to separate. Coromir and Doran were staring at her arms as it happened with similar cocked eyebrows and a smile, and I smiled. Look, Cormier, if you're thinking of taking us all on, I'd think again, I warned the ancient being. Doran wasn't naturally quiet at that moment, and I wondered if he had been refrozen. Come now, Graham. Do not take me for a fool. If my aim were to fight you mutants, I certainly wouldn't choose such a dreary location, Cormier said as he inspected his fingernails. Then name your purpose, Barastium. You have me, now what do you seek? Doran finally spoke up, with an aggression I had not yet seen from him. I stood closer to Iona and John as Cormier slowly walked to my desk and sat in my chair. He looked at everyone with a smug grin as if he was reveling in the confusion. It was not uncommon for Cormier to enjoy being the only person who knew what was going on, but everyone also knew that I hated it more. Spit it out! I yelled at the lounging sorcerer, who responded by simply turning his head toward me as his smile grew larger. I yelled at the lounging sorcerer. He simply responded by turning his head toward me as his smile grew larger. Bye-bye, Cormier said to me, and I looked at Iona, then back to the confusing conjurer. Cormier snapped his fingers. Then me and my friends braced for an attack. Instead, we were met with the sound of my blades transport confirmation beep. And my eyes went wide. It was you, I exclaimed, just as John, Iona, and I were transported to the battlefield outside the barracks. What the hell? John asked in a panic. How did he do that? Iona asked, also in a panic. I don't know. Magic can't affect Hammonian technology. It makes no sense, I said to the other two, as much as myself. Just as I completed my sentence, a realization occurred to me. Wait, what is the one thing difference between my blade and all the other Hammonian tech? Well, you're a Hammonian, so you should all be the same, right? Iona asked, but John looked at me remembering something important. Your crystal! It freaked Calderon and the other scientists out. And the other scientists out. John surmised, and I nodded in agreement. Yeah, I made a fusion crystal, Hammonian based with magic infused. That must be how Cormier is able to control my program, I explained, and Iona began pulling on her cloak with one of her 4 hands and looking down. Why did Cormier send us out here? Iona asked finally with a quivering voice. Doran, I said with large eyes. Not wasting another second on speculation, I quickly got close to my friends and transported us back to my room in the barracks. Upon our return, we saw Cormier and Doran in a fierce battle as smoke plumes and electric bolts flew into various furniture and scorched the walls around us. Cormier noticed our return and with little attention snapped twice in our direction, sending out a couple of thick, human-sized smoke blobs that slowly morphed into anthropomorphic shapes until they looked like a couple of smoky, faceless elves. The smoke elves pulled out smoke swords and immediately began to attack with slashes meant to kill. I transported out of one slash's way, and Iona, who was behind me, dodged and grabbed both elves' arms in 2 hands, then began to pummel its face with her other 2 arms. Every strike caused the smoke elf's face to disperse on impact, but it always returned, so she pushed the elf back hard to create distance. John was defending himself from the second elf's smoke sword attacks by blocking them with his mech arms. He tried a punch or two himself, but the same result happened, leaving brute force attacks ineffective. After engaging my Spellbreaker macro multiple times to attempt to remove the smoke elves from existence, I realized Cormier had an ability to disentangle his focus from his spells. Whether he knew it or not, he effectively found a loophole in my macro. I couldn't let Cormier have his way, so I set my sights on the 2 old men duking it out on the other side of the room. Doran was peppering Cormier with a multitude of green electric bolts emanating from his ring, which put the sorcerer on defense. As I went to catch Cormier by surprise, I attempted to flip out my iron blade to attack, but the piece of the desk surrounding my hand made the transforming mechanism unusable. Cormier paid me no attention as he shot a sharp blade of smoke at Doran's head. It didn't appear Doran had any defensive devices, and the smoke blade was moving too fast. So I focused on Doran's body, pointed my left palm at the Hammonian leader, then said, "Tarka!" A light blue bubble encapsulated Doran, and the black smoke blade smashed into the shield and bounced off, cutting a large hole in the wall where it landed off to the left. Doran's eyes sparkled as the bubble popped, and he nodded at me. The annoyed magic man looked at me with fire in his eyes as they began to glow bright purple. "It appears your magic prowess has progressed if your shield was able to withstand my attack," Cormier complimented me. Able to withstand that attack. That level of attack. "Graham, help! We can't hit these guys," John called out as he and Iona kept attacking the smoke reaches without success. Iona had a large cut on one of her forearms, and John was holding a smoke sword inches away from his face. Running over to my fighting friends, I instructed, "When I say move, get as far away from those two as you can." John roared as he pushed the sword away from his face as hard as he could, causing the elf holding it to fall backwards, losing balance. "Now!" I yelled, and both John and Iona ran out of the room. I yelled. Both John and Iona ran out of the room as the two smoke elves looked at me. "Brajir!" I called out with as much strength and focus as I could, pointing my palm facing upward. A sphere of fire began to grow until it was the size of a basketball. The two smoke elves began to approach me to strike, but I triggered my blade and transported a large fireball in between them. As soon as the fireball arrived at its destination, it exploded as if it received a large amount of oxygen all at once. The smoke reaches were blown away from the explosion's shockwave along with my desk. Oh man. "Firebomb transporting?" John asked as he poked his head back into the room. "Just thought of it," I said as I scratched the back of my head. "Ah!" A cry of pain. that was a good cry of pain. "Ah!" A cry of pain sounded from behind me, and I turned around to see what happened. Cormier was behind Doran as he held something to his neck. Upon further investigation, I could see that Cormier was holding the syringe he stole from us before our last battle. "What have you done?" Doran asked in pain through gritted teeth. "You should recognize this all too well. It is a Hammonian recipe after all," Cormier said with a cackle of satisfaction. "No!" I cried out, and Cormier looked at me as he pulled the syringe away from Doran's neck and threw it on the ground. "Now watch as a mere mortal dies a common death," Cormier said to me with direct eye contact and a sneer. Doran fell to the floor, and I transported to his side and lifted his head up. He looked at me as he convulsed and aged rapidly. "Graham," Doran began to say. "I'm here, Doran. Stay with me, buddy," I said as I tried to hide the panic on my face. They need you. The forest. His forest. The forest. His forest. It's the key. It's the key. It's the source. There we go. That'll be confusing. "It's the source," Doran said with a final breath, then fell limp as his skin wrinkled before my eyes. "Forest?" I thought, confused and devastated, as I looked back at Cormier's smile. "So this was your plan all along? Kill this old Hammonian? What is wrong with you?" I pelted Cormier with questions in angered and disappointed tone. Cormier ignored me completely and began an evil laugh that began louder and more unhinged by the second. Suddenly he was engulfed in a flurry of black smoke, and Iona, John, and I were forced to shield our eyes from the intensity. As we all coughed, the air began to clear, allowing for more visibility. To my surprise, Cormier was gone. Where'd he go? John asked. I don't know. It's not like he was losing, I said and began stroking my chin with a furrowed brow. Maybe Iona began to say, but it was interrupted by a piercing high-pitched tone. It was hard to tell if it came from a specific source or was just directly attacking my brain, but it developed into an immediate migraine. John and Iona both fell to their knees, so I surmised we all felt the same pain. As sudden as it began, it stopped and was replaced with the evil laugh of Cormier. We all looked around to see where he was, but the room remained empty beside the three of us. Hello, Cormier's voice. Cormier began to speak, and it was in that moment. It was in that moment I knew he was projecting his voice into my head. From the confused look on Iona's and John's faces, I could tell they were also hearing the same. As I could imagine, you are quite confused by the appearance of my voice sounding in your simple mind. So there's no mistake. Know that everyone on this forsaken ball of water we call Orbem is hearing the same voice as you. The evil snarky sorcerer continued his announcement. A wave of unnatural fear and cold coursed through my body. It wasn't due to Cormier's voice or some outside force, but instead as if Cormier was projecting the feeling to further emphasize his point. Those who know me and those who do not, my name is Cormier Valdoro Barastian. He began a speech. I have disposed of the Homonian leader. This act is my declaration of war on the entirety of Orbem, and all who are unfortunate enough to reside here. Cormier made his oppressive statement with a much more intense tone. The self-appointed dictators that plague our cities and murder the innocent in the name of treason shall lose this power. The Elven menace will meet their end and answer for their crimes. Cormier's message was beginning to sound like a political rally speech. It made me wonder if he was trying to recruit sympathizers. With the death of Doran, no more will the Homonian influence continue to loom over our heads. My army will stamp out this infestation once and for all. Cormier continued his rant, making me much more nervous as his manic speech became more personal and agitated. Finally, why am I separating it? I don't know. Finally, I leave you all with this ultimatum. Throw down your arms and join me in bringing Orbem to a new dawn. A dawn under my rule. Those who do so will be spared. Those who are foolish enough to rise against me shall fall. To prove your loyalty, bring the head of one elf or Homonian to Nocturne Forest. You will be welcomed. Cormier finished his disturbing monologue, and my head began to feel lighter as the temperature warmed. Holy crap. That was not okay, John said while rubbing his temples. What's he gonna do with all those heads? I asked with a panicked tone and looked to Iona, holding my neck. I asked with a panicked tone. I looked to Iona holding my neck. There's no way anyone would think of joining that maniac, or even visit the terrifying forest, right? Iona asked and looked to John and me for confirmation. I don't know, I mean, his argument wasn't 100% unreasonable. I'm sure he mostly confused people more than anything, I rationalized with wide eyes. What are we going to do? He didn't exactly give us a timeline, John said, and I knew the chaos. John said. I knew the chaos his declaration brought was his goal. If anyone was running around preparing for a war or fighting over loyalty, they wouldn't be able to organize. John and Iona just looked down with slumped shoulders. Alright, I'm back. We plan on preparing for a battle anyways. It just looks like we'll be getting some practice on goblins, I guess. I tried to convey optimism. Everyone heard this. You think anyone will be trying to take your head to that forest? John asked with large eyes, as he gave me a haunted stare. Iona looked slowly in my direction as if giving John's statement real clout. Whoa, no one's gonna try to cut off my head. Maybe Forno, I said, and then John's haunted stare infected my face. But then I shook my head and continued. No, whatever. First things first. I need to put some firewalls on my blade and remove that mystery macro, Cormier added. I'll take you both back to the village to fill in the rest of the group. We're on high alert. Who knows when goblins might attack and kill a Canath or two. John and Iona went silent and had dark, serious expressions. What? I asked in a concerned voice. Unfortunately, the attacks have already begun. We lost 2 Canath the other day. Iona began to explain but got choked up at the thought. John put his arm around her. Yeah, Founder. Vorshish was one of them. Got caught up in a goblin attack. Didn't make it. John finished Iona's statement. It felt like a punch to my gut. The war had already begun. Canath Village was too close to Ground Zero, and there was no way the Blackclaw Forest was safe outside the walls any longer. Damn it, I said in almost a whisper. And this is even more reason to prepare to fight. I have to tell you guys something, I began to say, and John and Iona looked up with narrowed eyes. What is it? Iona asked, as she clenched all 4 of her hands. I smiled softly and said, the Orbem Homonians weren't just sitting around all these years. And there we go. Oh my god. Well, sorry everybody. No game development tonight. It's already 1:15 for me. But anyone who's watching this in the future, I really appreciate you taking the time and having the interest of getting a sneak peek into Book 2 of the Homonian Chronicles. And anyone who popped in and out during the stream, you are very appreciated. As well as anyone who has followed me on Twitch or YouTube lately. So everybody have a great day, whatever time it is for you. And hey, tomorrow's D-Day. That's when I turn in the book. So as long as I don't try to get an extension, we'll be full on developing the video game. Probably tomorrow night, if I get this finished up. I might only have 42 pages left. It's kind of like 3 chapters, so I should be able to knock 3 chapters out during the day, hopefully. I'm tired. Alright. Thanks everybody. Oh, and I'm going to be working on that new cover song soon, so I'll be streaming. I'm actually thinking about just recording that one and uploading it. Probably uploading it to YouTube. I could upload it to Twitch too, but I don't like doing that. Twitch is for streaming, you know. So I'll probably end up either recording my recording session and then uploading it to YouTube, or I don't know, maybe I'll stream some of it. It's kind of hard. It's hard getting all the levels right for the you know, the input of the mic mixed with the music, you know. But we'll see. Either way, thank you, YouTube.